Are we seeing a spiritual revival? It seems that way because the spiritual pendulum seems to be swinging the other way, with younger Gen Z millennials coming back to the church, more men than women, and that's great news. Thank God for that. But the question is for the church, are we going to disciple them in a way that draws them closer to God or further? I believe that there's two paths. One is better than the other. So let me explain it to you. So George Barna's research shows that the Gen Z's millennials are attending church about just under 2 times a month, more than the older generations. And they're coming back because they're trying to look for meaning and purpose. And the other reason they're coming back is because they see the culture wars and they see that the church can be a refuge for them to actually help them kind of find who they are. And I think that as they're coming to the church, we need to make sure that we disciple them and mentor them in a way that is biblical and grounded and whole. Because if we don't do that, and we raise them in a faith that they see as a weapon in the culture wars, then we can see them go out into the world and just engage in a very adversarial way. So these are the two options. One is a very straightforward, biblical, and Christian way, and one is much more politicized. So how we channel the faith is very important. So let me explain to you what I believe we should do in this current circumstance. So as an Asian American Christian, I see that the world right now is very anti-men and especially anti-white men. And when I see this DEI and then this sanctioned discrimination against men, I get very angry and I hate this because as a Christian, for me, any kind of discrimination, bigotry, and racism against anybody, it's not to be called for, and it should be resisted and countered. But this is the world that these younger men are growing up in. And I'm going to speak about white men right now because if you grow up as a teenager, early 20s, knowing that the world thinks that you're always a problem and that you can do no right, and between men and women, you have these girl boss women who say, I don't need men. I need them. It's like a fish needs I need a man like a fish needs a bicycle. These kind of things. And when they hear these things, and on top of that, they see the world that is, everybody has their own truth and everybody is going their own way. And there's no absolute foundation and moral tethering. Is it any wonder that they're coming to the church because they're looking for meaning and purpose and just to be accepted for who they are? And as they come to church, they might have all these different agendas and feelings and emotions. And for leaders and pastors and ministers, I think the time that we're in right now is so uncertain geopolitically, domestically, and there's so much ideological hatred across political means, even within families. And I'm experiencing that right now. That we have to think about how are we going to disciple and mentor them in a way that is biblical, but that also allows them to see beyond the current situation. And I think that the way we've done discipleship and raising men to be, and men and women to be whole and grounded Christians has to change, because the vanilla, tried and true faith that Christianity has been for the last however many years is not working. And now that people are coming back, we need to actually present them a different way of living a Christian life. And I believe that, as you can see here, the Barbarian Way, if we can paint for them a picture of a Christian faith that is completely beyond their imagination, and not just head knowledge of doctrine, but also one that is hands-on, that is creative, and that is world-changing and risk-taking, then we can paint for them the true picture of what a Christian faith can be. Not the sanitized version, but a on-fire, sold-out religion that can transform the world. The Barbarian Way to Tom. Risk everything. I believe that we need to give him religion that makes them see that Christianity is a life or death proposition. And I think that instead of being safe and secure and stable, we need to give them a faith that is vibrant and a bit crazy and insane, so that people can say, wow, what is this Christianity thing that can change the world outside the means of the world, that can be only accomplished spiritually? And I want to just share this short passage here. See, because if we have a civilized Christianity, the civilized are satisfied with ritual. But barbarians live and thrive in the mystical. For the civilized disciple, religion provides stability and certainty. But for the barbarian, a life in God is one of risk and mystery, and maybe even a little insanity. And there's that one passage in, I think, Matthew 11, where they say the violent are seeking after the kingdom, and they're going to take it by force. And it sounds, when I first read it, it sounds a bit weird. But when you realize that for them, they grew up in this religious, pharisaical world of legalism, tradition, and now they get the news of the gospel of Jesus Christ, and it is life transforming, that they are hungering and seeking after that. And that's a type of religion, true religion, we want to give them, so they can understand what Christianity is about, that can transform the world. Because if we don't do that, if we don't paint a picture for them that Christianity is so fulfilling, then they might see Christianity in a way that is very utilitarian. And that's the danger of having them see Christianity as a ideological tool in this culture war. And I know that some of you might feel, well, you know what, look at Charlie Kirk. Look what happened after that. They hate us. And they do hate us because we stand for what is right and good and true. And you have to resist this temptation. And we have to mentor and raise them to say, you know what? There is this war going on. And we have to be careful that they don't see this religion, this faith, their personal faith, and the faith of the whole Christian kingdom as just a tool to be used to engage in battle. Because if you do that, then they might start allying themselves with people who are very secular in the world, and they will just see Christianity as a way to get to their goal. And if they choose a goal which is maybe a more Christian nation, but they use it in a wrong way, then eventually over time they might think, well, you know what? If I can't use Christianity, I'll use the ways of the world, which is power and control, and it can be very ruthless. So, and if we can't discern and have wisdom as we meet each person to know which way we need to guide him or her, then they're going to go down that path. And at the end of it, they might say, you know what? Religion and Christianity was good for a while, for a season, but I don't need it anymore. And they'll toss it aside. And that, for me, would be the saddest thing, because God wants us to change the world, but He does not want us to sell our souls while we're changing the world. Maybe we think it's for Him, but the truth is, God wants to work with us and use us, but God doesn't need us. So as they're going down this path, maybe they'll say, well, Tom, I see that God calls me to this world. As they go down this path, tell them you are an ambassador for Christ, and you have to be gracious, loving, patient, the fruit of the Spirit, all that. And you have to engage in the right way, and there is a right way. But even if you do everything right, there might be a certain limit as what you can do in this world as a Christian. And you have to tell them, you know what, that's all you can do. And after that, you have to just trust God and live to God. And that's the way it goes, because we don't always get what we want in life, right? And then for both sides of it, people who are being discipled into being barbarians on fire for God, and those who are wanting to be engaged in the world in the cultural way, in the right way, they might have this lingering anger and resentment that how they grew up was not fair. The one advice you need to give them is to say, welcome to the world. Life is suffering. And for these people who grew up very socially connected and they think everything should be always easy, the Christian walk, a lot of it is suffering. A lot of it is suffering. And maybe this suffering that they're going through, this racial discrimination, this emasculation of men, this rejection of Christianity, maybe this is their burden that they have to carry and that they have to learn from so that they can actually be a voice that speaks the Christian truth for their generation and the generations after them. And we have to tell them, you can't shirk away from it. You can't hide from it. You can't say, I don't want it, because in the midst of pain, and all Christians who are sincere, in the midst of pain, God can do a lot of good through that, because he will turn everything that's bad into good for his purpose if you see it that way and if you allow it to happen that way. So as I wrap up here, I want to just say, well, what do I do? And I will say, have them read Barbarian Way, or the other book, More for Men, is called Wild at Heart by John Aldridge. And it's a way to reset their mind and release them to be on fire for God. And whether they read the book on their own in groups of 2 or 3, or as a small group study, or as a men's group, I think that's one way to actually help them understand Christianity is going to be done a different way now, and to have them live their lives at a higher level, elevated. And then secondly, within the church ministries that you have, they need to be taught, first of all, good doctrine, good theology. That is important. But more than that, they also need to learn and to be exposed to the serving and sharing and giving, so that when they see Christianity, they don't see it as just something to be learned. They also see it as something to be done. Just like James says, show me your faith. I will show you my faith by my works. And that can give them a true understanding of how Christianity has been so effective in changing culture in a positive way that they have lost sight of all these years. And thirdly, I will say, for those who do feel that they need to be in the world of cultural engagement and politics, just warn them, I might have said this before, that they're ambassadors for God and that they need to represent him with honor and just do what they can, and know that there's some lines that cannot be crossed so that their faith is compromised, because their soul is more important than what they can accomplish for God. And we all represent a good and holy God, and he can defend himself just fine. In the next video, I want to talk about practical ways how the church organization can be used or changed, or maybe even create new ways for ministering to this next generation, because the church is at a crossroad right now. We're transitioning to the younger generation, and we need to have new expressions for serving them. New wine, new wineskin. So that'll be my next video.